finish his last few beautiful guitar chanting. Radha Madhava Jayo Kunjabira Ijanavana Thank you, Adipurush Prabhu. I was just thinking in the Bhagavatam, it's mentioned that the 7 notes, Sare, Gama, Padhani, the 7 notes, there's a story where they descend from the spiritual world. And their sole purpose is to, because music awakens the soul, so their sole purpose is to awaken the living being to a higher, even a higher seeking or an experience or all that. And that's what I felt while you were singing. Totally the heart, isn't it? It's like,
I saw one documentary about an orphanage in India. They had like 300-400 children there. You know, they were all like abandoned by their family and broken homes and everything. And 3 times a day they bring them into this auditorium and they do a thing called Wings, where they glorify Krishna and they sing. And these children just sing. Oh my goodness. And they're just uplifted. You can see their spirit just soaring. Children just sing. And they're like so innocent. Glorifying Krishna, connected by the spiritual vibration.
Yeah.
Glorifying Krishna.
This was in India?
Huh?
Orphanage in India?
Yeah.
Okay. I think Adipurush was on mute, so I'll just repeat that he was sharing his experience of an orphanage in India where so many children, hundreds of them would come and sing with all their heart for Krishna, and it was so uplifting for whoever heard and whoever was there. They were, yeah.
Called it Wings. You know?
Wings. Oh, they called it Wings. Thank you. Thank you, Adipurush. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Ashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavatir-uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 1, Text 38. Right? Text 38. We recite the shloka?
Yeah.
We do. Oh, let's recite the shloka. My voice is soft. I'll speak louder. I'll try to speak louder.
Okay.
Mrityurjanmavatam vira Dehena sahajayate adyavabda shatante va mrityurvai praninam dhruva. Mrityurjanmavatam vira Dehena sahajayate Vabda sharam deva Mrityurvai praninam. Word to word meaning. Mrityu, death, death. Janmavatam, of the living entities who have taken birth. Veera, O great hero. Dehena saha, along with the body. Jayate is born. One who has taken birth is sure to die. Adya, today. Va, either. Abdashata, of hundreds of years. Ante, at the end. Va, or. Mrityu, death. Why, indeed. Praninam, for every living entity. Dhruvaha is assured. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charan Aravinda, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O great hero, one who takes birth is sure to die, for death is born with the body. One may die today or after hundreds of years, but death is sure for every living entity. Purport. Vasudev wanted to impress upon Kamsa that although Kamsa feared dying and therefore wanted to kill even a woman, he could not avoid death. Death is sure. Why then should Kamsa do something that would be detrimental to his reputation and that of his family? As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 2:27, Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad apariharyerthe natvam shochitumarhasi. For one who has taken his birth, death is certain, and for one who is dead, birth is certain. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. One should not fear death. Rather, one should prepare oneself for the next birth. One should utilize one's time in this human form to end the process of birth and death. It is not that to save oneself from death, one should entangle oneself in sinful activities. This is not good. Om Agyantimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Shri Radha Murlidhar Gaura Chandra ki Srila Prabhupada ki all the assembled Vaishnavas ki Jai. Hare Krishna, seeking the blessings of all the great souls who are here today, especially His Grace Adi Purush Prabhu and all the Vaishnavas here. By your blessings, hopefully we can have a nice discussion which inspires us all in our Krishna consciousness. So I was thinking of The theme, from what I read, and as we know in the story, this is where Kamsa is trying to convince, Vasudev is trying to convince Kamsa not to kill Devaki. And he's trying argument after argument with logic and compassion, trying to bring his heart. And we know he won't be too successful with just the arguments. And finally, what he'll say will ultimately impress Kamsa. But nevertheless, these are such important, wonderful instructions for us. And uh, it's so nice to see the path Vasudev is taking to 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 overcome this situation. It's not the path of force. He could have fought back. Of course, he knew he was nothing compared to Kamsa's strength. That's true. That was also true. But instinctively, he could have, let's fight and all of that. But being a great soul, being a devotee of Krishna, being so spiritually situated, he's instinctively turning to spiritual wisdom. He's turning to Shastra. He's turning to what he may have learned from Guru. He's speaking what he applies in his own life. And that's why these are such wonderful realizations of Vasudev, and he's speaking these things.
He's not just trying to stop conflict, right? The Ram kills Ravana.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord Chaitanya wants Ravana to become a devotee, not just beat him, but uplift him. Right?
Okay, that's a very wonderful, a much better explanation, I think, of Vasudev's heart. That's so true. That Vasudev was not just trying to defend himself. True, he was simultaneously trying to benefit. Absolutely agree. Yeah, that's the Vaishnava's heart. Perhaps in every situation, trying to benefit, trying to see how I can help, how I can serve this person.
Don't do that. That's not for you.
Yeah. It's true. It's not just save my wife, but it's not good for you. What are you doing for yourself, Kamsa? Thank you, Adipurushu. So I was thinking of the theme of today's discussion being the temporary nature of reality, and how, therefore, towards the end of the purport, Prabhupada is telling us that rather one should prepare oneself for the next birth, rather utilize one's time in this human form to end the process of birth and death, rather than trying to get into all of these things. At the same, and the beauty of Krishna consciousness is that ours is not a process of detachment, ours is a process of attachment. The process of detachment is difficult. When we try to, I've experienced in my own life, when I try to give up a bad habit, or try to give up something which is not good for me, or try to stay away from something, it's difficult, because the focus still is that thing. So in my mind, what I'm saying is, like, there is this simple thing which, to describe that, they say, if I say, don't think of a red monkey, then of course we're going to think of a red monkey. And in the same way, the process of detachment is about, don't think of that, don't do that, don't do. And that's a very difficult process. And that's why sometimes it is said that the process of the Ashtanga marg and the Jnana marg is like that. They are all about no, don't. And at least in my own life, no matter how hard I try, I go back to that very same thing, no matter how much I say no and whatever I hear, because in a sense, I'm just hearing about that same thing again and again and again. But ours is a process of attachment, which is, we don't just say no, rather we put much more focus and emphasis on saying yes to what is the right thing. And so we want to get attached to the right thing. So there's this very beautiful shloka in the Bhagavad Gita 2.59, which says, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinam rasopyasyam raso raso ras something param drishtva nivartate. Sorry, third line. So he's saying in that the living being, it is very difficult to give up sense enjoyment. It's very difficult to give up what we have experienced in this life. And when we are perhaps experiencing what we are experiencing in this life, it's also all the other lives' experiences are subtly or subconsciously right there. So we've had so many years of association with having a nice time in this world, trying to be happy in this world. And suddenly when we say, when we start, when we try to change our thinking about it, when we're trying to be, Krishna conscious, trying to understand, no, this is not good for me. So it's very difficult. And there's a very empathic, right word, shloka by Krishna that he understands. He says, you can't, I know it's very difficult. It's so difficult. But then he says, raso arjam raso pyasya. He says, but when you get the higher taste, then it is very easy to give up the lower one, although the taste remains. Krishna is saying, although the taste will remain, that means as we start our spiritual life, the way we are giving up our things which we don't want in our life is by trying to be attached to Krishna, trying to be positively. I'm just remembering one experience. In our brahmachari days, they used to tell us that the way to give up lust, sorry, the way to, if you're having lusty thoughts and lusty, sometimes you just see a sight or something in your past comes up, or which today's culture is all about that. And so it's so difficult then to avoid that thought, so difficult then to say no to perhaps what a person may do after having such a thought. And so they used to tell us that the deity is specifically, the beauty of the deity will give you the higher taste, and then you won't have to suffer the enjoyment of lust. You won't have to go through that to realize there's nothing there. You won't again have to put your mouth in the hot desert mirage expecting something great to be there. Yes.
So you're saying emphasize the positive
Yes.
opposed to the negative. I mean, obviously you're trying to stay away from things, but rather than emphasizing that, to emphasize what you're doing good. Like,
yes.
Emphasize the positive, not the negative.
Yes, emphasize the positive. And in a sense, it's not that we're trying to stay away from the bad, because then again, that becomes the focus. We are trying to be Krishna conscious. And the secondary thing along with that is, because we want to be Krishna conscious, we don't want the bad. Like, our success is not that I stayed away from the bad. Our success is I'm Krishna conscious. And with that, I'm also trying my best to stay away from the bad. And so they would tell us to do this. And that was very effective. And I used to hear this. There was this book which was released many years ago called the Darshan, the deity book. It was a massive, beautiful, huge. I think it was also there in the Bhakti Center. I know many years ago. And there was this couple, I think they were, who went to all the temples in the world, and they took so much effort to take the most beautiful pictures and photos, and there's a such, it took them years to do that, and from their own heart and money they did all of that, and professional. And when you see that book, and I was thinking, this is really gold, because I have experiences of going through books of beauty of this world, but they really leave me empty. They really leave me seeking for something. I'm like, what am I getting? And that's why lust is described as scratching an itch which will never go away. No matter, it's not going to go away. And so flicking these pages of beauty doesn't get anything. But when I used to take this darshan book, we had 2 copies in our ashram, and so many times we used to go. And I almost remember the if I can now almost see the book, the Sham Sundar, and then you turn and there's Mayapur, and then there were so many temples which I never knew. I don't know whether Radha Murlidhar is there or not, but Radha Govinda is not there, right? And then there is all the Kala Chanji and all the famous temples which, and Radha Vrindavan Chandra of New Vrindavan Nath, and so many beautiful deities. And that immediately those experiences convinced me that yes, the higher taste is a much easier option than trying to struggle with the lower one. And so in this 2.59, he talks about this, that our path of attachment, if we focus on, then we won't need to struggle too much with saying no. And of course, at the same time, we say no to put a safety net around us. That we know that to keep our consciousness, we have to say no to certain things. Prabhupada used to say there's no point. There are these statements, go ill together. If you type this phrase in the Veda-based search or some Prabhupada book search, this go ill together comes so many times. And sometimes he says, sense gratification and Krishna consciousness go ill together. Sometimes he would say, I'm forgetting, so many of these hits come. And he says, like, you cannot try to light the wood and pour water in it at the same time. And that's how we are trying to kindle our Krishna consciousness. And therefore, we have to try to let the wood dry so that the fire sparks. We can't say I can do a little bit of this and then I'll also have the fire. Okay, so that was one thing I was thinking of, was that how we get attached. And the other one was just this, again, back to this theme, that the temporary nature of reality. Here Vasudev is telling Kamsa, no matter how big plans you make, no matter what you do, time is going to take everything away anyway. And very interestingly, time, the force of time is such, it's imperceptible. Right now, we can feel almost all the other forces of nature very easily. The physical forces, we can experience chemical forces, we can experience, all these sensory, we can experience. So we know they all exist and we understand them, we can perceive them, we can perceive our mind, but time is described as perceived only in one way. And that is destruction. The only effect of time actually is dissolution, that things go towards an end. And therefore we know time is passing. Right? When we are at a party and we're having a great time, and then, oh no, it's time to go. Or we're sleeping and it's a wonderful dream, and oh, I woke up now. And the same way life is just, I was young once upon a time, going to school and happy and carefree and no anxieties and no worries. And suddenly then I had to grow up and school ended, and then college, and that's college life and your new explorations and new adventures, and that ends. And then there's some other adventure and phase in life and that ends, and everything's just going, Anand Bihari Prabhu was talking about my hairstyle and my beautiful tilak. And that's going to go and it's going to become, it's all, no matter how much I'll try to pull it up and stretch it, and no matter what I do. In fact, the more I struggle, the more I'll suffer, not knowing and therefore, that's one very sobering thought, and one thing which will really make us well balanced in our material endeavors, in our pursuits, where we know that this is not going to be here forever. This is going to pass. This is going to change. Yes.
It's no money, but you still, while you're here, right, you still enjoy what's here now and work on issues now. I mean, obviously, it's going to come to an end, but don't you still have to work on what's around now? Like, you work on food distribution, feeding people. I mean, obviously, I won't be forever doing it, but I'm doing it at the moment, so I'm just trying to like put it into perspective. Yes, you were aware of the end, but you still work on what's like, I'm part of this world right now, so I still work on what's going on in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that perspective. Oh, so what's your name, please?
Alan.
Alan had a wonderful perspective, and thank you for bringing that, because while I was speaking, we shouldn't go into this, the world is illusion, nothing. You know, that zone, it's a Mayavad zone actually, because Krishna didn't create this world to be rejected, but the world is a wonderful place. Our lifetime, everything is a wonderful thing for something positive. And that is for, as Prabhupada describes in the end, one should utilize one's time in this human form to end the process of birth and death. So as Alan just described, he was saying that, yes, we are in a reality, though. We can't just reject or neglect or not deal with that reality. Yes. And so the way we are using, so the purpose of saying that the temporary nature of the world is only to remind us that what we are here for. If we are here for the right thing, then every moment used is going to bring us satisfaction and joy at the spiritual level, which is eternal. So time only applies to the material part of our lives, but to the spiritual path, it's going to be eternal. You were talking about food distribution. So in food distribution, taking that example, and I know a very great soul who does amazing food distribution, Adipurush Prabhu, and perhaps the material side of it definitely has to change by time. Someday he's in one place as his headquarters doing food distributions, someday in another, someday there's snow, someday there's summer. That will happen. Someday his body was young and able, and someday the body is going to be old. Someday there's people to help, someday nobody. Someday somebody's going to praise him, someday somebody's going to curse him. All that, but the material, that has to change, that will change. But the spiritual, his heart, I'm 100% sure, I don't even need to ask Prabhuji, every single day for him is as joyous, as satisfying, as deeply connected to Prabhupada. For him, in that sense, there is no time. That will never change. His service in, I don't want to say it in such a such a bad way, but I'm trying to say it, in this wonderful life and in his next amazing, wherever he is, that thing is going to continue forever. And that's, so on the spiritual sense, we are not going to change. But you're right, in the material, we are trying to save ourselves from being too attached to enjoyment, but we want to give ourselves completely to service. In the Mahabharata, there is an example. There were two personalities, one who had a very long life and one who had a very short. One was Bhishma. And if you read the Mahabharata, today is Bhishma Ashtami, which is the birth of Bhishma Dev. And Bhishma's life, according to the Mahabharata, so Krishna, in the Mahabharata, the Pandavas, they're about between 80 to 90 when they're on the battlefield, and Krishna lives till 125. So Bhishma was at least minimum 100 years older than the Pandavas. So on the battle, he's about 190. It's a little difficult to judge because the Mahabharata, the purpose of Mahabharata was never factual history. It was impactful. You know, it was always to give us a lesson. So it's a little difficult to judge, but it can be anywhere between. So 190 is around that age. Some analysts also say up to 250. Some say it's 170, but definitely he was a very old man. But Bhishma is counted as one of our Mahajans, one of the 12. Prabhupada so many times brings them up, the 12 authorities of devotional service. And he had a very long life. And externally, his life was so materialistic. All he did was protect the throne. And at the same time, that was his service to Krishna. That was his struggle. From day one, that was his struggle to protect the throne. The vow he took to protect his father. The endeavors he went through to get his three nephews married. That was his struggle to protect the throne. And then the Pandavas were born, and then the war, and then fighting in the war and taking the side and the advice he gave and all of that, taking the curses, being blamed for going on the wrong side. A very long life. So he too applied this principle. He didn't give up his service, as you rightly pointed out, Alan, that service remained. His heart to, I have to do my best. Of course, he didn't just give up. Oh, anyway, time is going to pass. What's the point? He was, and in fact, he was Ichha Mrityu. He was the one rare soul in this world who was allowed to choose his time of death. Wow, that's such an amazing thing. To be blessed in that way means, Krishna won't give you that blessing unless he completely trusts you and you're so responsible with your life that you get that power to choose your point of death. Material nature doesn't have to kick you out. You know when to exit. And so his long life was a struggle. He's trying to bring the Pandavas. And at the end of his life, it's so interesting that Krishna, when he's lying on his deathbed, Krishna tells the Pandavas to dress up in their best clothes and then go meet him at death. And one may think, since we are talking about detachment, one may think that maybe nobody should have met him. He's dying. It's his last day. Maybe someone should have told him, Bhishma, whatever you did now, give up, be detached. Don't think of anything else. Go from here now. But Krishna took the Pandavas, dressed up as kings, and they all went and met him to celebrate. Why? Because the celebration was actually, it was like a glorification of Bhishma. That Bhishma, finally, your 190 years or how many ever years, this is the success. What you lived for, you have achieved. Now you focus on Krishna. Now you can, and that allowed him to completely, happily detach himself. And of course, we know the Bhagavatam. In the first canto is Bhishma's prayers, and so beautiful, that whole section of the Bhagavatam. So, yeah, these were the two things I wanted to speak about. I had a few more shlokas, but I think let's have some discussion and sharing.
Another
Yes.
question I want to ask, you were saying don't emphasize the negative. For example, people who have alcohol, drug problems, like well, they go to alcohol AA. Now the emphasis there is on not doing it, but you're saying, I mean, I don't know everything how they actually work it, but you're always saying it's just important to emphasize what positive things they can do, like help the community. Because if they keep talking all the time about avoiding drink, then it means it's remaining the focus of their life. But I assume that trying to say.
Yes, exactly, Alan. If you speak about what you don't want to do, ultimately you're focusing on what you don't want to do, and the mind has no other options, so that's what you're going to do. But if you're rather speaking about, as you said, perhaps in the AA, I also don't know, but I know that 12 steps are very God-centric. I know they're right. They're very focused on God, and yes, and so if they do, and I think all of us in devotional service have that testimony that it was some higher taste which pulled us, allowed us to break through so many of our lower tastes and still breaking through, and so definitely our Sangha. And yes, Aditya.
Like you pointed out, the scripture says on the spiritual platform, time as we know it is conspicuous by its absence. In other words, Krishna's going out in the morning with the cowherd boys into the pasture, and he's coming back at night. So there is a time, morning and evening, but it's not time as we know it. It's not irrevocable that you can't get back and you lose your, the kirtan we had this morning is eternal. And it says what's real is eternal. We're always serving Krishna, even though the form of service may change, but Jiveta Swadopayana, the spirit soul is by nature a loving being and engaged in service to Krishna, and that goes on and on.
The nature of time is not,
time as we know it. is conspicuous by its absence. That's how Prabhupada says it, so it's interesting.
Thank you. Pick up something that's better for us and focus on what we shouldn't be focused on. And that made me think about the Gita verse 16:21, talking about the three gates to leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed. And I was wondering if anger and greed work in that same way, or if there are other methods to, I guess, releasing ourselves from the clutches of anger.
Prabhu, we can't hear. Please ask you to speak up.
Yes, I will repeat the question. Julia is asking a wonderful thing. She's saying that just like lust works as a positive, like when we focus on the positive, then we can let go of the negative. So does that also apply to Krishna mentioning 16.21, that the three gates of hell, lust, anger, greed? Does it also apply to anger and greed, that we focus on the positive and can give up the negative? I think one way to understand it is that we can, some of the anarthas can just be turned positive. It is said that Prabhupada gives this example that Hanuman used his anger in service when he burns up Lanka and all of that. And if you want to be greedy, then be greedy for Krishna. Be greedy to do. Sorry? Laulyam, yes. Yes, Laulyam is, in fact, Laulyam hi ekamulyam. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is asked, or Rupa Goswami is asked, what is the one price for devotional service? He says, intense greed. So perhaps we can even change those emotions, just point them somewhere else. And then, but I guess also the focus on the positive would work for anger, for greed. Also, another thing is the modes of nature. When we are in sattva, it will naturally, all the anarthas are very much in their calmest state. And it's easiest to deal with them, easiest to even understand what's going on, even to go deeper of why am I feeling angry? What am I greedy about? To introspect, the mode of sattva is very... Shikshastaka Prabhu, yes, you want to add something to that?
Hare Krishna, thank you. I just, this verse reminded me of something I read yesterday from, I read audiobooks, and I'm just now reading Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Chaitanya Shikshamrita, which is a really good book. I recommend it. But in the first part, he recited this verse from the 11th canto. It goes, after many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. Thus, a sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. So I thought that that was a very good example of how the human form of life is very urgent. That's all.
Thank you, Shikshastak Prabhu. Absolutely. The human form of life is, you said urgent? Was that the word you used? It's very urgent. Yes, it is urgent because it's a rare chance we have to break through the transmigration through 84 lakh species of life, to break through the cycle of birth and death, and yes, to rise higher from what, and as you described, that what is available to the cats and the dogs and the hogs, and there's that one shloka from the Bhagavatam, and the reason is it's true. And sometimes, at least for me, I think like this in my own life, what else is there anyway? Perhaps that's one blessing of modern technology, that I can kind of experience everything the world has in the first maybe 10, 15, 20 years of my life. And then if I still don't get it, that I'm done, there's nothing more. It's just going to be the same thing in a different form. Whether I'm going to be here and I'm going to go somewhere, or and if I that's one advantage of social media nowadays. When I see, I'm like, it's the same thing. It's just the same thing. Like, can there be anything more than this? And another thing is, it starts getting crazier. Like, in an attempt, even for people, ultimately, as George Harrison said, everyone is searching for Krishna. Some know it and some don't. In that attempt to search for Krishna, then when you don't get Krishna, then you just go crazy. Then you just go mad. You don't know what to do. Then where is Krishna? And then options in the material world are very few and limited. And then when those are exhausted, then you're just going to it goes crazy. And that's what I'm starting to see on social media. It's becoming so insensible. TikTok and all these things. It's like, what's there? And so it's nice in our own life we can have that realization that, okay, I've experienced everything. Why again? Punas charvita charvananam, as he says, Shukdev Goswami, that why chew what has already been chewed, either by others or by ourselves. Yeah, in our own life we've chewed it, or someone else's. It's in one of my mentors used to say in school, we stick chewing gum under the desk. He would say, would you ever pick up someone else's chewing gum? No, because it's done. And so if we don't learn from our own experience or from others' experience, then it's like, okay, I'm trying that chewing gum and I'm also trying to get something out of it, but there's nothing there. Any other comments or questions or thoughts? How wonderful is Krishna? Today I thought I won't miss that, so that Adipurush Prabhu doesn't say it and I do, but I've forgotten. Thank you, Adipurush Prabhu, for reminding us how wonderful is Krishna. Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining. And Hare Krishna. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Have a wonderful day.